This woman was about to lose her life. She said something in her last words that shocked everyone. What she said could change everything the world knew. Welcome to African Tales by Pigtails HD. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button. If you don't, I'm afraid you might not see us again. Now go to the story. Amaka, a woman in her prime, found herself in a place where hope seemed as distant as freedom. Locked in the depths of solitary confinement, she was the focus of a trial that had captured the attention of the entire city. Accused of kidnapping and murdering Bella, the daughter of a famous judge in Nigeria named Amaka, who had been missing for 5 years, the woman faced not only the possibility of a death sentence, but also the relentless judgment of public opinion. The media coverage was relentless, painting her as a monster even before her trial was over. The people of the city, thirsting for justice for little Bella, saw Amaka as the embodiment of all their fears and hatreds, with no room for doubt or compassion. However, despite the public outcry for her conviction, the detainee remained strangely calm, like an enigma that not even her lawyer could unravel.
Why don't you say anything? Why don't you defend yourself? We could negotiate a deal if you cooperate.
Her lawyer was perplexed, unable to understand his client's obstinate silence.
It doesn't matter what I say. They've already made their choice.
Amaka replied calmly, her eyes lost in a distant point on the wall of her cold cell. Her voice, although firm, carried the weight of years of suffering, a burden she bore alone. Imprisoned, the 32-year-old woman lived her days with a deep sadness, but also with a dignity that defied her desperate situation. Despite being on the brink of execution, she refused to let fear and hopelessness overwhelm her, standing firm in the belief that the truth was the only faithful companion she had left. On the eve of her execution, a visit from a priest offered Amaka the chance to make her last confession, a ritual for many in her situation, but for her, just another reminder of her imminent fate.
Would you like to confess, child?
There is nothing I can say that will change my fate, Father. The truth will die with me,
she said, her voice tinged with sadness. As night fell over the prison, Amaka spent the last hours before her cruel fate in deep reflection. She thought about her mistakes, about the choices that had led her to that fateful moment, on a journey that only she knew in its entirety. The walls of her solitary confinement, silent witnesses to her anguish, seemed to close in around her, like a dark omen to the approaching end.
Yeah, I think this is the end,
she sighed. And so she faced the dawn of her last day, a woman condemned not only by the law, but also by the incomprehension and fear of an entire city, preparing to face her fate with the same enigmatic serenity that had accompanied her throughout the trial. So you can better understand why she was being sentenced to death. It all happened 5 years ago. Amaka's case shocked the city and paralyzed the country as she was convicted of the terrible charge of kidnapping and murdering the judge's daughter. Her story was a complex web of forbidden love, revenge, and twisted justice. She had accused Judge Amaka of having an affair with her, an allegation he vehemently denied, and which put his reputation in jeopardy. However, things took a tragic turn one fateful day when the judge's wife was returning home with Bella, their 3-year-old daughter, and Amaka caused an accident that resulted in the death of the wife and the subsequent kidnapping of the child. The city of Abuja cried out for justice, fueled by a collective rage against the criminal they believed was responsible for the tragedy. Captured in her own home, the woman faced a trial where all the evidence seemed to point against her. Despite her fervent denials, the conviction of her guilt was unshakable. Convicted, she was sent to prison, where she spent the next 5 years in solitary, an additional punishment imposed by Judge Amaka himself to isolate her completely, preventing any form of empathy or understanding that might arise from interactions with other inmates. Amaka's life in prison was marked by loneliness and despair, a dark reflection of her sealed fate. Over time, she began to accept the end that awaited her, with a resignation born not of peace, but of the exhaustion of fighting a seemingly inevitable fate. It was then, on the eve of her execution, hours after the priest had visited her, that an unexpected encounter brought new torment to her already bleak reality. Amaka, the man who had been the epicenter of her misfortune, visited her in her cell, and after she had angrily hurled a million insults at him, he, with a vengeful smile, simply said,